Good afternoon. Welcome to Sports Nothing But Sports with Kent Sterling for Monday, March 9th, 2020. Brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. Call Dr. Mike O'Neill, 317-849-2933. Make an appointment to see the best dentist you've ever seen in your life. He's been my dentist for the last 26 years. I love him. Let's talk college basketball with the great Dustin Dopirak from The Athletic. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
How good was Kamar Baldwin the other night against Xavier? My God almighty.
It's unreal, and it's been just so fun to watch. Just the shots that he somehow finds a way to come up with. The thing that he had at the end, I mean, it really sort of encompassed everything he's been all year. I mean, he took his time on that. I think that's the thing that really stands out to me. Is, I mean, he gets the ball with about 9-10 seconds to go, and he was never rushed. Like he looked like he had 2 more minutes to play, and he just takes his time and then made like 2 sort of quick moves off that high ball screen. I think that NZ sets just when he just gets just enough space and knocks that thing down, and he's just. That shot, it's amazing. He, really recreated his shot in the offseason. Basically last year he was bringing it way over his head. Just had really bad mechanics, and his mechanics are so much better now. And this percentage isn't that much better. I think he's at 31%, which is exactly what he was at last year. But his level of confidence in it is so much higher, and it makes a difference, basically, especially late in games. He just knows he has that shot. He knows he can hit from 25, 26, where last year that was a real crapshoot. I mean, it just did not look good coming off. He didn't look confident in it, but he really trusts that shot, and he made so many big ones down the stretch, and obviously the game winner was just incredible, and it just fits in a line of just so many big shots he's hit, certainly going with the game winner against Villanova, but big time shots he hits against Stanford, and just various others. He's just been able to close games. He's just really been special this year.
His eyes must have lit up like a spotlight when he saw the Xavier guy come under the screen, right? I mean, what were they doing? There's no way Travis told a guy to go under the screen. They left him open. He's the only guy that's going to beat you in all likelihood. He goes Drano.
Yeah, I think the only reason that it makes sense to go under is it was tied, right? If I'm not mistaken.
No,
were they down 2?
We're down 2.
Yeah. So I guess the only reason you do that is because Kamar can just cook you off the dribble, which he did several times, in that game. He was able to just blitz guys to the rim. And, Aaron Thompson did the same. I mean, Xavier was having an issue stopping the dribble drive in the second half. So that's the only reason why I would say it might make sense, because he is still better off the dribble going to the rim than he is taking that 3, basically. If you've got to pick your poison against Kamar Baldwin, you're going to let him take the 3-point shot if you have to give him something. It still looks bad when he drills it. So, because you don't really get a really good contest there, and they didn't. But, he can obviously cook you getting downhill and pulling up. Or getting his foot in the lane, or getting all the way to the rim. There's just so many ways that Kamar Baldwin could beat you. I understand the concept of going under a screen to get to Baldwin and cut him off, going to the rim when you've got a 2-point lead, sort of hoping that he's going to try to beat you that way because that's his best shot. But he can still hit that thing, And I guess you don't want to give him the easy one, but he can knock that thing down now, and that just means he can beat you any way possible.
And the triple's the only way you're going to get beat, right? You're going to go over time, and
that's the reason why you shouldn't go under it, is because if you give up the 2, you're playing overtime.
Right.
You're taking a shot there. I guess the only thing I can guess is, all right, you're thinking Kamar Baldwin could beat you this way and that way. Maybe they were going under ball screens earlier against him, but you can't do it there. You can't do it in that case, but like you said, it does give you the option to get beat right there. But I get, again, why there's just so many different ways that he could beat you, just so many things that you have to take away.
The Big East tournament's going to be fascinating, and I hate this matchup for Butler against Providence because it seems like Butler just historically doesn't play great basketball against Providence. They're very physical. They keep Butler from doing those things that Butler loves doing. How do you see their path to a championship in the Big East tournament?
I think the thing that's tougher, this is where we've seen at various places in the second half of the season, really second half of the Big East schedule, where you can sense the difference that Christian David would have made. Yeah. And this is another one of those games where I think one of the reasons they were able to beat them on the road early in the season is they had David to go to. And, Providence was a tough cover for them last year, again, because of their inability to defend bigger forward, kind of 6'7-ish, 6'8-ish guys who can take you inside and take you outside. Obviously, Alpha Diallo is, basically the best at that. Basically at being a bigger guy that can beat you inside, beat you outside. They were able to put NZ on him, and NZ can make a really big difference. But when you have to pull NZ off the floor, which you have to at some point in time, they were able to go to David, and that's something that they haven't been able to go to. It's a tougher matchup for them when and they've got a bunch of other guys who are built like Diallo, that are that 6'7" 220, 230 type of guys, and that makes them a tougher cover. And so again, when you can't play a David, when you can't bring somebody like that off the bench, then you're putting Jordan Tucker on him. And Tucker's not bad. Tucker's certainly better. We've talked a lot, I think, about how much better of a defender Jordan Tucker is this year than he was last year. But he's still not as good as David is against those specific type of guys. So that I think it's still tough to deal with those bodies. They also turn you over a lot. And Butler is still not great as far as dealing with pressure. They're better, I think, than they were at the beginning of the season, certainly with that St. John's game when they really fell apart down the stretch. They didn't have that issue against St. John's the other night. I'm not sure what the turnover total was. I wasn't here for that one, but it wasn't a problem. And so they've certainly gotten better, but it's certainly something they've got to keep in mind. They will have a healthy Aaron Thompson, so that makes a huge difference. That makes them much more, a much better team, much better at dealing with that, and much better at ball security. So that really helps. But, I mean, those are some issues they're going to look at. Again, just defending the kind of bodies that Providence has and not turning the ball over.
Let's talk about Indiana for a minute. Indiana's got Nebraska to kick off the Big Ten tournament in a couple of days. That looks like it should be a win, but you don't want to take anything for granted if you're Indiana in the Big Ten tournament, because Indiana sucks in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Historically, they have not been good there at all. This Nebraska team looks like the wheels are coming off. Yeah. Obviously, I would have told you in January, oh man, this is not a team that you want to be playing, because they were hitting some threes. I mean, they really gave Indiana a run for their money, and then they just blitzed Purdue out there. And for a while, they looked like a really tough team to beat just because of the shooting they have, the skills they have. They had the Burke, Thorbjornsen, all those guys that could hit shots, and it's a mess right now. Obviously, I don't know if they're going to have Cam Burke or Deshaun Burke or Cam Mack. I got to get the names right. Cam Mack and Deshaun Burke are both suspended, and you don't know if they're even coming to Indianapolis. It just seems like a team that has sort of lost itself entirely, and it's a tough deal, obviously, because Fred Hoiberg was coming in and having to build up and putting together a whole bunch of JUCO guys, and you just don't know what chemistry is going to be like. And this seems to be, kind of the downside of bringing all those guys together at once. Is sometimes you don't know what you're getting, and they're falling apart. So you would have to think Indiana wins that game. If Indiana does not win that game, like Nebraska is a game they can play themselves out of the tournament. I think if they might be safe right now if they get past that one. I don't know that they might need another one, they might not. It depends on how the bubble shakes out, if there's going to be any more bids stolen or anything like that, if there's going to be a team, if somebody other than Dayton wins the A10 and grabs a bid or something like that. There are some things to be worried about there that maybe they could lose a bid. I think they're probably mostly safe, but Nebraska, they could play themselves out. That's one of those losses that you sort of circle and say, well, that's an issue. If you can't beat this Nebraska team the way it's playing in the Big Ten tournament, I don't know if you ought to be in. That's one that opens the committee's eyes up the opposite way, the way that you don't want to. But if they get that one, I mean, they're, who do they got? Who's the sixth? Is that Iowa?
Penn State.
Penn State. That's it. Okay, I haven't seen the bracket in a minute. So that's a winnable game. That's when
they're playing poorly. Penn State's not good.
Fading. No, they are fading. I mean, they still have talent and they could still beat you. But they seem like they've hit their peak. They seem like they were playing their best basketball a couple weeks ago. They're not necessarily playing their best basketball right now. Now, still, that doesn't make them easy to beat. They still have shooters. They still have Dredd. They still have Myron Jones. They still have Lamar Stevens, who's one of the best players in the league. So you can't sleep on them, obviously. And again, they're not playing this game in Assembly Hall. And Indiana has had a tough time winning elsewhere. Obviously, they've been okay in neutral site games so far, and they're going to be in Indianapolis, and that's a long way from Pennsylvania. But it's still not playing at the Hall. So it's a different ball game, and they've got to figure out a way to win. They've got to figure out a way to win and beat. That's still a good Penn State team. Again, it's not playing well, but it's still a good Penn State team.
How do you feel about Indiana the way they're playing? I mean, it seems like they're not playing bad basketball. They're just having a tough time closing close games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the issue is that they're still not a great offensive basketball team. They have pieces, they have athleticism, they have size, but they don't have all the skills that you need. I mean, they don't have enough shooters, and more so, it it's still the same issue. It's just you're playing three guys to the 3, 4, and 5 at almost all times that don't stretch the floor. Right. You bring Jerome Hunter for maybe 15, 20 minutes. He's the only guy playing the 3, the 4, or the 5 that anyone is worried about taking a 3-point shot. Race Thompson can hit him. He has hit him in high school, but he hasn't done that in college much. Justin Smith can hit one on occasion, but they're not defending him out there. They're basically daring him to take that shot if he wants it. So everybody they're playing is packing the paint. They can put 3 guys in the paint and not have to worry about it. So that makes them it's tough to function that way offensively. And so they go through these droughts. They go through. I mean, I think would they go 9 minutes without a field goal against Wisconsin, and you see droughts like that, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, where things aren't going, and that's everyone wonders, why does Devontae Green still play? That's why Devontae Green still plays, is for all of his mistakes, and he can go through a stretch where he can't make one either, but he's a guy that if you're not finding it anywhere else, you throw Devontae Green in and maybe he gets you a shot. Now he couldn't do it the other night because he busted up his left ankle in that first half when he had 16 points. Wasn't the same guy in the second half. Don't know if that's going to be an issue going forward. Obviously, he was able to play on it, but you could tell a major difference in him in the second half of that basketball game. He was just hobbled, just didn't have it. And with him not getting any production, they weren't getting much out of Trace Jackson Davis. Wisconsin would make it tough to score inside, and they couldn't function. And so again, when you don't have Green scoring from outside, when you're packing the paint, and it's tough for Trace Jackson to get anything going. That's tough. And they were able to get some shots inside and just not finish them. They got at least a couple looks, but they were shooting over Roivers. They weren't clean looks. They were getting contested, by their bigs. So it's tough. And, Indiana just has never had an easy, clean path to scoring baskets. And especially if they're not drawing fouls, and maybe they should have been, more fouls should have been called, but if they're not getting free throws, if they're not scoring at the rim, they got a hard time getting points.
So Archie Miller in the postgame talking about Lenardi, is that Archie doesn't strike me as a real humorous guy, like a funny guy, a guy who's going to make people laugh very often. Is this his awkward attempt at humor, or was he seriously being petulant about Lenardi? What was your take?
That's playing into your question. I have no idea. Because it's Archie. I have no idea. I have no read on this man's personality. I mean, rewatch the whole video. Right. That's what really stands out. I think my favorite part about all of it, that you're just like, okay, I just don't get this guy's register, is when he's trying to imitate Sesame Street characters at the beginning. Like when he's trying to do his impersonation of them, you're like, is that what they sound like? I don't know. I'm not sure that's how Sesame Street characters talk. And it was just, he's like, I'm like, is that it? I don't know. I mean, everybody can do a Muppet impersonation, right? So he's obviously bringing it out because, he's got kids, so he's seen Sesame Street in the somewhat recent past. But just watching that, I was like, okay, is he trying to make a joke? Does he not know how to make this a joke? Does he not know how to make this funny? And it ended up coming off harsher than he probably meant it. I don't know. I think what's just odd about Archie too is I know he doesn't read us. Right. At all. He's never. I can think of maybe one time that I have heard him complain about a story at all. And I don't think he cares about the media. I think he would be perfectly fine with playing basketball games with no media whatsoever. Out of all the people that are probably not upset about the possibility that coronavirus leads to playing these games in empty gyms, Archie Miller would sign up for that in a heartbeat. And Archie Miller, he would be just fine playing these things just at a YMCA somewhere. But it's just I don't know if he was trying to be mean to Lenardi. I don't know if he was trying to make everybody else in the place laugh. I don't know. I was just okay, I get it. I'm sorry, it's not that I get it. Is this a joke? I think he's annoyed at the idea of people talking that he shouldn't be there. That they don't belong there. I think coaches do get in that stretch of, okay, haven't we beat enough teams to be in the tournament? It's a case where I think just because the NCAA is what it is, you're still taking 64, 68 teams. It's not like you're just taking one. I think it's okay, we don't deserve to be champions necessarily, but hey, don't we deserve a shot? If all these other teams are going to get in, don't we deserve a shot? We're playing in this incredibly difficult league. Nobody's playing, this Big Ten is as tough as it's ever been. So, why are we getting beat up on for losing to really good teams? Why don't we deserve a a shot if all these other teams that don't have to play, this good of a league this year, get in. Why don't we get to get in? So I think that's sort of where he is. And a bunch of other coaches will have the same argument coming down the stretch. I think everybody, once they feel like they've lost an opportunity, once they get asked about the brackets, they suddenly get defensive, and coaches who say they haven't been worried about it all year, get the question right about now, and all of a sudden they have every statistic on hand. Tom Crean used to do that too. They know all about quad one wins. Yeah. They all know all about their Ken Pom rating, their BPI rating, their net rating, stuff that they was like, oh, we don't talk about that. That's just noise. That's just whatever. As soon as they lose a game that puts them on the bubble, whether it's losing in the conference tournament, whatever, all of a sudden they got every number to just spit right out at you. And that was Archie Miller's case, because I think he looked at it. I do think they thought they win that game and they're in, and they don't have to think about it. And now they've got to start making their case. I think he was at least obviously aware that Lenardi came on and said they didn't belong in. They were in their last 4 in, and they shouldn't be in if they're under 500 in the league. And all of a sudden, Archie Miller's like, okay, I'm not letting that narrative go forward. I don't know if it matters if he lets the narrative go forward. The committee either hears it or doesn't hear it, and he's not going to help or hurt his cause by giving a press conference to us. So I don't know. I don't know what his plan was. I don't know what he thought he accomplished. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish. I don't have a read on the guy. I just don't. I mean, I know he's a tough, competitive dude who wants to win really bad. He's fired up. But as far as is he using humor or trying to appeal to humans to try to get him to see his side, I don't know if he knows how to do it. And it's I don't want to act like he's this totally socially awkward guy. He's just.
He's focused.
He's laser focused. He's locked in. He wants to win really bad. He's not interested in BS at all. And I don't think he likes the idea of having to make a case. I think that's a big piece of it. I think he's annoyed at the idea that he is in the position that an argument has to be made one way or the other. I mean, he might at the end of the day get the good end of that argument, but someone's probably gonna have to fight for Indiana unless they go win the conference tournament. It's not gonna be a sure thing. Especially if they go one and done, if they beat Nebraska and win the game they're supposed to win, but then go lose to Penn State, and then you're looking at them as 20-13 with, again, without a good Big Ten tournament win, with the only, with having lost, what will it be? Only 4 of their last 6?
They are. I know they started 5-3, so they're 4-8 in their last 12. Yeah. That'd be 5-9 in their last 14.
Yeah, so that's not going to look good. Ultimately, that's not going to be an easy sell, and so someone's going to have to sell them. And I think it annoys him that he's in that position, that he feels like he's got to politic to get in the tournament. So that's just, again, the idea of having to appeal to people to try to get them to let him in. I think is something that is not a place that Archie Miller likes to be,
and that's a bad look for him. Because fans, they want Indiana in. Yeah. They would like to agree with Archie, but Archie has made his argument in such a repellent way and in such a petulant way that now fans are disputing Archie while having ultimately the same goal, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, in some cases, you'll be surprised at how quickly you can get people on your side by attacking the media, whoever it is at any level, whether that's politics or sports or whatever it is. You start attacking the media, and all of a sudden you've got friends. You definitely saw. I think if you looked at internet comments over the last 48 hours or whatever, you did see a lot of people be like, "Way to go, get a march!" And there's going to be some of that. So ultimately, I mean, now I think it's a thing that's going to be blow over in 2 days. We're not going to be talking about this by Wednesday. We're not going to be talking about this by Thursday. It's what's the term? Tempest in a teapot, if I'm not mistaken. That's the phrase. It's going to go away. It's barely going to be something anybody talks about. It's not going to cost him anything. I don't think the committee is going to decide, whether he gets in or not based on the fact that they said somewhat mean things about Joe Lenardi. I guess. I mean, he really. We all did have to point out that it was an Oscar the Grouch reference, that he doesn't believe that Joe Lenardi actually should live or does live in a garbage can. So I don't know. I mean, it was it was just kind of odd. I don't know. But so it's not going to be a big issue. Is it a good look? It's not a good look. Is it a horrible look? It's not the worst look. I guess, I don't know. Like I said, maybe he's trying to be funny, show personality. I don't know. Long term, it's not going to hurt him with the fans. What hurts him with the fans is whether they win or lose, And they're still in a position where it's going to matter if they get in the tournament. But he's only going to build so much goodwill if they go in at a 10 or 11 and they get beat in the first round. It's better than not going. Certainly better than going. Whatever you get done on the NIT, they'll take whatever bid they can get at this point. But after that, it's only going to have so much, staying power. He's got to win basketball games. The biggest thing he's got going for him right now is having landed Christian Lander. That's right. That's the biggest positive he's got on his side, and then be able to combine that with having gotten Trace and having gotten Romeo. It's his in-state recruiting is the best thing he's got going for him, but he needs to win more basketball games, and that's really what goes down. As far as he's not going to win and keep this job based on his press conference performances or his public persona. That's not Archie's thing. Yeah, he hopes if he's got to live in, and it's not that he's bad. He hasn't won any friends, but he hasn't created any enemies, really, when it's come to how he's dealt publicly and interpersonally. It doesn't seem like he's created loyalists, but I don't think he's done something so abhorrent as to really lose people and to start getting people actively working against him. It just comes down to he is in a position where he either wins or loses, and that's how he keeps his job or doesn't keep his job. There's nothing else that he's created tangentially that's saving him. And again, recruiting matters in terms of, but it has to produce wins eventually.
Let's talk about Purdue, because we kind of gotta, but speaking of the NIT, that's where they're headed, right?
Looks that way. The Rutgers loss is really a killer one.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a path for them to get there without winning the whole thing in Indy, but it probably would take them getting to the final. Now, getting to the final does mean beating Ohio State, Michigan State, and Maryland in succession, pretty much. Now, especially if they get that particular track, and make sure that either a Penn State or an Indiana doesn't beat Maryland, on the sort of bottom half of that bracket. But they can get in. I don't think it's out of the question for them to pull that off if they were to win those 3 games. But it's a tough sled, and again, that's another thing that they could get blown off of depending on how the bubble shakes out. But they're not in good shape at all, and they've left just too many on the table. And they've had, they've been good at Mackey, but ultimately they've also lost games at Mackey this year that they should have been able to win, or at least should have been able to play better. And they got trucked by Illinois and Penn State at home, they beat Penn State. God, I can't remember who I even saw this year. Michigan beat them. Did they lose to Penn State at home? I think so. I think they lost to Penn State, Michigan, and Illinois at home. And those all look bad, and then they lose to Rutgers down the end. It's just not a great look. People just talk about the Ken Palm stats, and it's your efficiency numbers look good. But it just comes down to they've got a bunch of good players, not necessarily a great player, but when all the good players come together, they look pretty good. When they don't, they can look really bad. They can go through stretches where all of those guys go cold because none of them are good enough that you can guarantee they'll get 15 for you every night on a bad night. They're not in a great position. Again, can they play themselves into it? Maybe, but they're just not in a great spot right now.
What do you got up on The Athletic, or what are you going to have up soon?
Good question. I got to get some stories, man. I got to get some deeper stuff. It's been weird because I feel like I had already written about everybody down the stretch. I'm going to try to write something on Kamar, I think, before this tournament starts. I'm piecing together something on the 1980 Purdue Final Four team. So I'm hoping that it's going to turn into something. But mostly been a lot of game coverage lately just because it's been bouncing around to each of those and trying to kind of put in perspective where everybody stands. Basically what, it's kind of just follow the narrative of these teams and where they're going. But I'm going to be going to New York, to follow Butler instead of sticking around here in Indy. We're going to have a bunch of people here in Indianapolis, though. Bob Kravitz is going to be here, certainly, but also Dana O'Neill is going to come into town. Brennan Quinn's certainly going to be here covering the Michigans. Bill Landis from Ohio State. We're going to have at least 4 or 5 people here to start with. So the Big Ten will be heavily covered by the Athletic. So I'm going to go out and cover the Big East and go with Butler as far as they go, but I'm going to stick around and cover the rest of that tournament once they're done. If they're done, basically if Butler loses, I'll still be there and get a chance to kind of take in Big East tournament at the Garden. So I'm looking forward to that.
Sweet. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it, Dustin.
Absolutely.
That is the great Dustin Dopirak from The Athletic. He is going to be covering the Big East tournament, going to be in New York City at Madison Square Garden, covering whatever it is that Butler does. And then, of course, that'll be Thursday. Indiana at it on Wednesday night against Nebraska. Got to win that game, I think, to get into the tournament. And then on Thursday, hopefully Indiana's playing during the nighttime and Purdue plays in the afternoon. We'll see what both teams do. Purdue needs multiple wins, and by multiple, I mean probably 3, in order to get to the NCAA tournament. Indiana's probably just going to need that one win on Wednesday against Nebraska, because losing on the back end of that to Penn State isn't debilitating. It's not a bad loss, and Indiana really doesn't have a bad loss this season. They have only won 4 of their last 12, but you know what? None of them are bad losses. Tomorrow night, the Celtics visit Bankers Life Fieldhouse to take on the Pacers. We'll be there. I cannot wait for that game to see Brad Stevens. Maybe we'll talk to Brad tomorrow on Sports Nothing But Sports. Tomorrow morning, Breakfast with Kent, 8 o'clock straight up on Facebook Live, about 8:15 on Twitter and Periscope, also on YouTube. It's a show so nice we do it thrice, for God's sake. Breakfast with Kent, always a highlight of the day, at least for me. Join me, brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry, 317-849-2933.